So we're called to trust God. God known by many names, of course, across the eons, through many traditions. It can be a little confusing because what does it mean to trust God? It sort of depends on our understanding, what religious tradition we're in, perhaps. But actually, I find that tends to be a consistency across what it means to trust God throughout the traditions. And it comes back to something you all know I've enjoyed talking about the last couple months. And that is actively engaging with presence, with the present moment. Letting go of different things, right? The fear of the future, fear of the morrow, as it says Christ said, to let go. Let go of our ruminating about the past, about our bodies or reputations even, our legacy or what have you. And indeed allowing that living spirit known by many names to bring us into the moment through our deep sourcedness in that God, in that divinity. And so indeed, there's that similarity of to trust God, you must trust the moment. No longer ruminate and yearn for changes in the past. And yes, deep attachments to changes in the future, we also are called to let go of, even if they're for the betterment of humankind. So ask yourself, what does it mean for me to trust God a little bit more today? To trust in God's providence, perhaps, that things tend to eventually serve for the good. Of course, that brings up questions of evil, right? Of misdeeds and bad habits. And we won't spend too much time reflecting on what I think are some pretty good reasons for why evil exists, at least according to our favorite mystic, Emanuel Swedenborg, and my own just awareness of what it means to be human. And that includes the fact that free will must exist to have individuals in such an image and likeness of God who seem to be separate, at least for a time. The free will, a spiritual free will to face the spiritual sun, so to speak, as our reading shared, God is the sun and the shield, and also turn away from God. That spiritual freedom allows us the circumference, the depth, so to speak, to exist. And there's other explanations that Swedenborg gives, such as how evil serves to help balance things out. It's used to compare things. You get to know what good is because you see what evil is. And it also collects other evils to itself, which helps it eventually be dispelled. So yes, there's that explanation, that awareness that trusting God is trusting the moment and allowing our past, our traumas, maybe we have PTSD in one way or another from really tough things in our lives. We may not even know it. We just carry it around on our shoulder, reacting heavy-handedly in our minds or outwardly at times when there really is no reason, except we feel like we should. It feels appropriate to us. And so accepting those traumas in a way, accepting that they happen, and being more willing to face them, I think is a big part of how we can trust God and come into presence, into the present moment a little bit. It's hard to do, I think, in that respect, because who wants to face something uncomfortable? It seems easier to be a little distracted, to be, have our issues from time to time. That seems a little easier, I think. But the call and the promise are large, or huge, in fact, because we're told that as we accept the past and heal from it, we find more of ourselves and indeed more of God as ourselves, within ourselves. More compassion and mercy. Not just a nebulous, I got the name of God right, that's what I found. But the reality of God as we see it in others, as we see it in our world, love, connection, peace, and ultimately joy. And I think some folk look at the world and see very little reason to trust the world. I think sometimes we mistake trusting God, letting go of fear, as believing that God will keep us, our bodies at least, perfectly safe. And yet when we're on another, mindset, we know perfectly well that we won't necessarily be perfectly safe. I think it's a misconception that some of us have, maybe not many of us, that God will somehow keep us from death. I think the younger you are, maybe the more you feel like that. As you get older, you lose people that you love. You have a realization of the reality of death a little bit more. But no, I don't think letting go of fear, that one of the things I think we need to do to come into the present moment, involves believing God will keep us from pain. But I do think that trusting in God, trusting in the present moment, involves addressing that pain, as we were just talking about, that trauma. It means addressing our fear of death, noting that yes, we are going to die. And shifting our mindset less so from our divisive, I am my body and my mind, I am my history and my reputation type of thinking, and more into the infinity type of thinking that we hear from many traditions, from Buddhism to Christianity. Shifting our perspective more to a God-like perspective. How would God think about this? It's funny to say, but in a way, that's often the call in our scriptures. Think about God and think about the universe. Think about ourselves from God's light. From a light focused on compassion, openness, no matter people's traditions, not judging or condemning, but instead hoping to uplift health, being there to uplift health, not in a needy way. Can't imagine God being too needy, but in a ready way, in a present way. Like the living God, living in the present moment, because that's all there ever is. And so when we reflect in that way, I think different things can come up for us personally. The divisions of how I think versus how God thinks can be pretty vast. I think it maybe highlights some of the recommendations, you could call them, in the Ten Commandments and throughout Scripture and other traditions, to let go of lust, let go of anger and hate, open ourselves to the stranger as Christ did, to let go of our religious dominating feelings as we see in Scripture. Christ critique, probably the most thing he critiqued, of course, is sometimes the legacy of what we know to be Christianity today. And so reflecting on that for ourselves, I think, can be powerful. And in a way, it all comes back to presence, that present moment awareness, because if I'm not yearning, I'm not thinking about the future and how I might get something. I'm not thinking about my kind of limitations of self. It may not seem that way, but I think when we're in deep attachment and yearning for something, we feel like we're not quite complete. We need some, reciprocity from the world. That we're not one with the universe itself, no matter the diversity within it. And meditative practices, prayerful practices, help us lean into that presence, to that present moment, awareness. Allowing us to, yes, let go of our fear and our ruminations. To hold even those ruminations and habits from fear to hate with a compassionate lens that actually helps transform it. I think all too often we think, well, the Bible said or the preacher said I shouldn't fear. I'm going to fight my fear all day long. I'm going to fight my anger. I'm going to fight my feelings of divisiveness and division. Whereas instead, no, like our traumas, and indeed connected to our traumas, we're called to be aware of it. To just be a little bit more aware, a little easier on ourselves. Allow our image of other people to be easier for them and for ourselves. Tend to like to think people think certain things about us. Tend to beat ourselves up. And just noticing those feelings and allowing that awareness, that light of spiritual warmth, spiritual wisdom, and love to transform it, to help us be there for others, no matter our differences, to help us lean into good practices, healthy practices, and ultimately to find that heaven, we're told, is within. Some say as they lean into these practices, they find joy they never thought possible, peace unimaginable. So there are many promises, so to speak, for doing this. It's not just so you get to check a box, go to heaven in some future time, but to indeed reconnect with your truest self and the divinity that underlies all creation. With that, let's take a moment to lean into presence even further. Leaning into trusting God as we allow the feeling of our skin, sounds around us to help us come into the moment. Yes, even that annoyance could be me talking. Help you to come into the moment, to see it. Noticing our breathing. Feel the ground below us. Below our bodies, I should say. And reflecting on the things that have come to us through this service. The ideas about trusting God that spoke to us one way or another through our own insight. Letting those go as well.
Sometimes when I feel alone, like I haven't got a friend, like I'm holding on by a slender thread, and I'm almost at the end. In the midst of all my trials, Lord, in the stillness of the night, there's a quiet voice that speaks to me, says things gonna be alright. It says love is all around me, I just have to let it in. And the song I thought I would never forget, I remember once again. We are one by our nature, we are one by our birth. Our spirits from the universe, our bodies from the earth. We are one by our nature, we are one by our birth. Our spirits from the universe, our bodies from the earth. Must you make me wrong just to make you right? Must I lose so you might win? We have all been down that road before, let's not go that way again. We are, each of us, a precious jewel. We are the rainbow's end. All we have to do is look inside, the treasure lies within. Oh, and when it's hard to see, I am you and you are me. Ooh, then maybe we should try to see with different eyes. Do 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 do. Deep down inside, all of us is a pure and shining light, and the only reason that we're here is to let that light shine bright. So won't you shine your light? Won't you give your love for free? You can heal the wounds of heart and soul. We can help the blind ones see that we are one by our nature, we are one by our birth. Our spirits from the universe, our bodies from the earth. We are one by our nature, we are one by our birth. Our spirits from the universe, our bodies